Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Apparently, Miami-Dade officials, they are anticipating riots, and I believe there are going to be riots in the wake of the Zimmerman verdict. I don't think there's any question he's going to be acquitted, certainly should be acquitted. And they anticipate race riots in Miami-Dade and all over Florida. They're asking churches to stay open that night in some kind of what I think will be a vain attempt to try to make peace. So they are clearly anticipating that there are going to be riots of a racial nature if and when he is acquitted. Now, we were talking in the last segment about this Obamacare. And by the way, George Zimmerman, they want him to be white. I mean, Zimmerman sounds like a Caucasian name, a white name. He's as white as Barack Obama is. He's half white and half Hispanic, so he's just as white as Barack Obama. Now, speaking of Barack Obama and Obamacare, as we were in the opening segment, we were talking about this unconstitutional decision, this mandate, and it was issued in a blog. It wasn't even a press conference. They put it on a blog, I think on the Treasury Department blog, that all of a sudden, presto changeo, the employer mandate, the mandate that requires every employer with more than 50 employees to provide health insurance for their employees, that's just been waived, gone away with until January 1, 2015. And with us to sort some of this out is Twila Brase. She is our guru-S. I don't know if that's a word or not, Twila, but you are our guru when it comes to all things that have to do with healthcare. Twila is the president of the Citizens Council for Health Freedom. She's also the one that produces the Health Freedom Minutes you hear right here on Focal Point. Twila, welcome back to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Thank you, Brian. Glad to be here.
Well, Twila, let's debrief a little bit on this decision that President Obama made yesterday. And obviously the first question is now, why would Obama do this? What's your take on why the president has done this?
Well, I think that there could be, there's what he said, right? Or not what he said, but what his people have said in two blog posts, which I, as an aside here, I think it's really interesting that the way this was announced was in two blog posts, no press release.
Isn't that
right?
something? And President Obama is as far away from this thing as he can get. He's on the other side of the world. He knows this thing is blowing up in everybody's face.
Right. So 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in two blog posts, no press announcement. And, good for the reporters to be watching the blogs, but that's not exactly the way that you let the media or the public really know what you're planning to do. But aside from that, there are the things that they said they're listening to employers, and I thought, no, they're not listening to employers. If they were listening to employers, they wouldn't have imposed Obamacare.
We'd have no Obamacare, to begin with.
That's when they should have been listening to employers, and that's when they weren't. So I think that probably this has to do with several things. One, of course, there's just the political ramifications because the midterm elections are coming up in 2014. If they delay for 1 year, they will have escaped the election period for having to do with all the employers and their employees, because this will not be happening until January of 2015. Another reason I think might be the fact that there's a lawsuit on federal exchanges not being able to offer tax or premium subsidies to anybody on the exchange. Only the state exchanges are allowed to do that, and they say the federal government says no, the federal government exchanges can do it too, but there's a lawsuit saying no, they can't. And so if you can't get exchanges in those, if you can't get subsidies in those 34 states that have refused to put in the state exchange, and there's no business exchange also in there for the businesses, then perhaps there's a delay here for them to hope to get the business exchange up and running by 2015, which is also what they said they have to do. And then I think the third reason might just be because they're not ready. So they're just wanting to take more pressure off the employers. They're wanting to take more pressure off themselves because they're not ready to set up the entire reporting system. And so that they say, well, we're listening to businesses, but I think they're actually, solving their own problems by trying to delay the mandate.
Well, and I think your first point about this being, in my judgment, just nakedly political, what this tells me, Twila, and I'd like you to comment on this, is that President Obama, by this desperation move, I mean, he left the individual mandate in place, so he's still going to drill individuals. They're still going to get fines, and 43% of the uninsured have no idea that fines are coming. They don't even know that they're supposed to buy insurance next year. They're going to get this bill from the IRS, and they're going to have no idea what it's all about. I mean, they are clueless, but the mandate hasn't been lifted for them. It's been lifted for businesses. And what that tells me, Twila, is that he understands that this thing is toxic to Democrat electoral chances because it is such a monstrosity. I think I'm right on that.
Yeah, but it is a curious thing that the individual mandate has not been lifted because it is individuals, as you say, who are going to get this shocking news that they are going to be required to purchase health insurance no matter how expensive the Obama administration makes it. And then some of them will find it completely unaffordable, and then there will be penalties, and a lot of them don't know that there are going to be penalties, and who are the people who are voting, So, maybe this was a little bit of a, not a coin toss exactly, but, if they take the pressure off in one area because they're not ready, it will also relieve the pressure from the labor unions who are all obviously employed, right? And the labor unions are afraid of losing their current coverage, and one labor union has already called for a repeal, and a second seems close to doing so. So they will have taken all of that off in order perhaps to keep the labor unions with them for the election time, but also all the businesses. So all the businesses now can hire over 50 people and can hire, full-time workers, more full-time workers. And so that's going to mean that more people will have their jobs for a longer period of time until the employer mandate goes in 2015.
Well, here's a question I have about that, because it seems to me that you may have incentives going the other direction. And I understand what you're saying. I hadn't really thought about that angle before. But one of the things that seems to me fundamentally unfair about this is you have a lot of companies, Twila, that have more than 50 employers. They've already made what may be some irreversible decisions to reduce hours and to restructure in order to account for what they were told was going to be the certainty of the implication of Obamacare. Other companies haven't made those changes. They weren't proactive. So it seems to me now, by changing the rules in the middle of the game, this is a real advantage to those companies that hadn't made those irreversible decisions. And now companies are stuck maybe with decisions that they made that they wish they could undo, but now they don't know if it's even worth undoing them, because a year from now they might be in the same boat. So it seems to me just completely cobbed up and really unfair to businesses that have already tried to make adjustments.
Right. And, and that's entirely possible. And I think that just would point more towards the labor unions who probably haven't made those decisions, right?
Yeah.
And so, maybe more than anything, this is about protecting their vote into the 2014 election. It's really hard to say because you can't look into their minds, but when you read like the Treasury notice, it talks about employers who have been responsible by offering their employees insurance. Well, that's their definition of responsibility. And so you just can't read what into their minds as to what they're thinking. But I think one interesting thing about this that hasn't been discussed very much is that the law, which President Obama signed into law, says very clearly that the mandate goes into effect in the months following December 31st, 2013. Now, can President Obama just on his own decide that, they're not going to follow the law? Their administration is going to change a deadline that is the law?
Yeah. Well, that's the
I don't think so.
That's the thing that aggravates me the most about all of this, Twila. I mean, I don't want to see Obamacare go into effect, but it is the law. Congress passed it. As bad as it is, as monstrous as it is the law. It's his law. He signed it. He does not have the authority unilaterally to waive it, to undo it, to ignore it, to refuse to implement it. It's unconscionable and unconstitutional in my mind.
But, of course, what he's doing by offering the delay is solving the political problems or other problems that they foresee. And they think that, neither side is going to quibble about this because he, as a Democrat, is doing it. and the Republicans don't want the law anyway. So, he probably thinks that this was a safe thing, but we have a rule of law in this country. And
Well,
what he is doing here is saying it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and somebody was saying this was deviously brilliant on his part, and it goes to what you were just saying. Now, if the Republicans seek to uphold a rule of law, then President Obama can point to them and say, look, I was trying to give you a break. I was trying to help you out here, and these mean, nasty Republicans, they're the ones that are trying to gum this thing up. So it is deviously brilliant. Well, let me ask you one last question, Twila. It seems to me, by lifting the employer mandate, then employers are not required to offer insurance to their employees. This is obviously a bad bill. Obama's recognizing it by waiving it for a year. I wonder if there's going to be companies that can say, look, this bill is going to be just as bad a year from now. There's nothing that's going to happen the next year that's going to make this smell better or look better or work better. So they may be thinking, I think there's a good chance this whole thing is going to go away, and I'm never going to have to offer health care insurance, and I don't want to if I don't have to because it's a snake pit now. And what will wind up happening is we'll have a lot of companies with over 50 employees dumping their employees into the exchange, which can't handle the people that are already scheduled for it. Do you think that's going to happen, or am I exaggerating that possibility?
Well, I don't know if you're exaggerating it. I don't think nobody knows what's going to happen, but an interesting little quirk has come up as a result of this decision, and that is that if employers are not required to report who they employ or how much it's going to cost them. In other words, they don't have to report to the federal government whether this is affordable health care for their employees, and yet the individual mandate takes place on January 1st, which means that those employees can go to the health insurance exchange, and they can't get subsidies and they can't enroll on the exchange unless their employer is not offering affordable insurance, and yet the employer doesn't have to report. So how exactly is that going to work?
Well, it seems like it's going to drive the cost of Obamacare completely through the roof. 20
Right.
seconds, Twila, last word.
Oh, well, I just think go to our website, cchfreedom.org, and get our Refuse to Enroll flyer. It's just up on our homepage, cchfreedom.org.
Our guest has been Twila Brase. She's the president of the Citizens Council for Health Freedom, produces the Health Freedom Minute that you hear right here on Focal Point every day. Well, Twila, as always, very helpful information. Thank you for your perspective.
Thank you, Brian.
Twila Brase, Citizens Council for Health Freedom. We'll be right back with more content, more of your calls. Stay with us, 888-589-8840. Back in 2.